FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
Whenever people raise that to me, was there sexism in the movement? I always say I don't know. And the reason I say I don't know is because I never had a discussion with any of the men. I don't know what was in their hearts. I don't know what their views were. I only know how I was treated. And I was treated as an intelligent, capable person. I never felt left out of anything. I never felt differently from them. I felt like them. I identified as a civil rights worker or whatever. I think the second part of it for me was that I wasn't really looking at the men in terms of how I would define my role. I was looking at other women and the kinds of women that we had in SNCC. Miss Baker, reminded me of my mother's friends. The first woman that I knew was Diane Nash. And in the summer of 1962, Bernard Lafayette came to Detroit to do fundraising. I worked with him all summer. And the climax of the summer was that Diane came to speak. And her theme was, "My baby will be born in jail." She was facing a jail term in Mississippi, and she was going to go, and she was pregnant. Well, she left Detroit in labor and, delivered her first child within 24 hours of leaving. Now that said to me that there were no restrictions on what a woman could do and be in the movement. So that was my introduction. And then, as other women have said here, I met Fannie Lou Hamer, Gloria Richardson. The women that I could see as role models just were doing so much. So.
Thank you. Dottie.
Well, the society was so sexist in the 60s. I understand there's a program called Mad Men or Ad Men or whatever. I've never seen it myself. The people are aghast at the sexism. I'm sure it's nowhere near what it actually was like. And I don't think it's any accident that Jackie Kennedy was the model for the way we were all supposed to look. Big bouffant hairdos and short skirts and little thin legs. Because that's the profile, that's the silhouette of a child. Big head, little body. And we were all childlike. It was considered childlike in a way. So the whole society was sexist. To think that SNCC was not sexist would be fantastic, that SNCC did not have any sexism in it. And you can see, especially from the stories in this book, that there were some struggles, actual struggles, without people calling it sexism or not, because SNCC only had very few assets, and one of the assets were cars. So who would control the cars, and who would drive the cars? And it was usually men. And one woman has a story about that in the book. Now, when I first met Jim Foreman, who for me was the hero of all time, and I would have walked through fire for him, he asked my name, shook hands, and he said to me, "Can you type?" Okay. This became the archetypal, horrible, sexist comment, especially taken up by white women later on. And I was beyond thrilled that I could say yes. Because what was I going to do there, little Jewish New Yorker girl? I mean, what, were they going to send me out into the woods of Mississippi so that some black people could get killed on my account? So I was thrilled. I never felt in the least bit put upon because I had a skill. Then I said to him later on, and not too long later, a couple of weeks, I said, I can also write. And he said, I need you, and he put me to work. That was...
Doing what?
Well, working with Julian Bond on the press, and we wrote the Student Voice, and we wrote press releases. So his attitude, the attitude towards women was, what can you do? What can you do? And so office work was not degraded. It was not, and it is degraded in this society. If you're working at a computer doing data entry, well, everybody poo-poo, who was that person? But to think that we were like this little island paradise without having the outside world affect us, I think that that's actually not true.